Welcome to Let's Talk Relationships Coast to Coast. I'm Alyssa Glickman. I'm here with Chuck Starnes from California, and I'm here in New York. Hi, Chuck.
Well, hi, Alyssa. I'm so glad to be here with you. And I was just thinking this morning, this is our ninth broadcast. We've been here for 9 weeks. We're just still starting out, but we've had a really good time.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Yeah,
of the topics that we've talked about, we talked about communication problems. We talked about conflicts over finances during the holidays, and then survival skills during the pandemic. How does a couple survive this? We talked about starting with the end in mind, relationship vision, how to have a vision for the new year, and then how to how to respond to some of the political polarization that's going on. How do we maintain safety and connection and bring a sense of peace to our conflicted world?
yeah,
And then last week, talking about this unconscious or this, conquering this fear of intimacy that we all have to some degree.
yeah. I know it's been really great. I'm enjoying doing this so much with you. It's really been a fun new thing to be sharing
And
and with everybody.
it is. And then to do our Safe Conversations workshop, which we really want to encourage everyone to join us when you can. And today, what I wanted to do is talk about that workshop, kind of reflect on it a little bit, because one of the things we covered was how do you turn frustrations into opportunities for connection? And it has to do with recognizing, we said it before, but recognizing that frustrations in a relationship are really wishes in disguise.
Right. Right. Isn't that an interesting thought? And I think, when I worked with couples or pairs of people that have frustrations, and what happens is we get stuck at sort of at this top level and butt heads on it, and we don't have understanding. So we need a way to go underneath it. And we do have a way to do that, right?
We do, and again, it goes back to the Safe Conversations dialogue that Harville Hendricks and Helen Kelly Hunt engineered, 30 years ago. But one of the things that you just mentioned is that to go deeper is important because re- recent relationship science tells us that frustrations in your marriage, if you are having a frustration more than 3 times, let's say, if it's recurring and it happens more than 3 times, and the trigger for that is an intense emotional reaction. It's the kind of reaction your partner says, "Oh, you're overreacting." When you have that kind of intense emotional reaction and it's a recurring trigger, it always comes from your past, not your partner. And yet I can hear everybody saying, "Wait a minute, it's not my past that frustrates me, it's my partner who's frustrating me."
Right, exactly. So that is really eye-opening for people when they see that. And it also, gives a lot of hope because when your partner can see that your overreaction that feels very intense and sudden is not really about them, then they can be with you in a different way. And that really,
Wow.
really allows for that. So when you can start to take responsibility and start to look at ourselves for when we go into this overreactive place,
Mhm.
kind of learn what we're really needing in that. Like there's a need underneath, as you were saying. It's really an unconscious need from our past. So when we can start to look at that a little differently, it changes the energy, it changes the dynamic from this to a softening.
A softening, and that change of energy really shifts you as a couple into a partnership for healing and growth in your relationship, because behind every one of these the recurring emotionally charged frustrations is a deep desire to get something you didn't get in childhood, and really makes a difference to understand that. So let's talk briefly how we can do it. First of all, engaging in the Safe Conversations dialogue. That's really the first step. I told a story during our workshop about Laurel and her husband Ben. And Laurel was, and of course these are not the real names of the people, right? But Laura was really upset because she felt like Ben had left her alone at a party. And when she brought it up, Ben was reactive. He said, he got really escalated, and triggered about it. But what happened when they went to the couples dialogue, it helped Ben regulate his reaction so he could actually listen to Laurel. And it made it safe enough for Laurel then to access information that was in her unconscious mind.
Mm, that's right. So when there's safety, then we can really go deeper and really start to learn. So when they, when the reactivity slows down, when we can just breathe and be with each other, then we can go for what's underneath and really share our real story and our real need, and go from, being more critical to being more vulnerable, and
Wow.
really asking for what we need. And our partner can hear us when we are safe and talk about ourselves and not being critical.
And that safety that we're talking about, where you said it helps you go deeper, it does then help you move beyond the surface things that are frustrating, and get to identify the root issue. And that's the second point. After they did started the dialogue, they identified the root issue. And it's true, when a conversation's safe, you've said it, you can things can come up and you can see more. And what Laurel discovered was that her overreaction, quote, was because of a childhood wound of abandonment. And that abandonment was triggered when she felt Ben was leaving her at the party. You see, she had grown up as an only child. Her dad left when she was 8 years old. Her mom worked long hours. And after school, she was at daycare until she was old enough to be left alone at home. And so she came home to empty home every day. And so that when she said, this is reminds me, being at that party reminds me of when I was little and I would come home to an empty house, then everything changed.
Right, but she may not have even realized that until they slowed it down, went into the dialogue, and there was safety.
Mhm.
She might have just felt, very justifiably wronged and very angry and critical and not making that connection. But, slowing it down, creating that safety allowed for her to have that connection with her past, which then would allow Ben to see her in a different way and not just feel attacked, but feeling like, okay, my wife, really has, some sadness in her, and I don't have to trigger that. I can do something and take care of her and help
Yes. Wow. And that's what happened with Ben. Ben, and that leads to the third thing. We use the safe conversations dialogue, get to the root issue. And then the third step is to take that frustration and turn it into a request.
her.
And you really said it when, uh, when Ben first heard what she had said, he reacted. I mentioned that, but he said something like, what do you mean? It wasn't a party for us. It was a networking party. It was business. I was there to connect with people and build our business. And man, I wanted you to come along, but if you can't come along without complaining like a baby, when are you going to grow up? And that reaction was not would not work. But you're right. When he slowed it down, the safe conversations slowed it down. They continued to, rather than rewounding that, reactivating that wound that Laurel had, it helped them, it helped her to formulate a request. And
Mm.
she said something like, last night we were at the party and you were talking to potential clients. I felt really alone, just like when I was little and I came home from school every day to an empty house. And then she said, what I'm really afraid of is that you don't realize what being alone does to me, and that I'll always have, and I'm afraid that I'll always have this feeling of being abandoned. And it's been mirrored that, he just mirrored that, right? Then he validated it. That's the second part of the safe conversation dialogue. You mirror first,
Mhm,
slowing it down, like you said, and then you validate by saying you make sense. Anyone that would feel that way given your circumstances.
mhm.
And then he empathized. The empathy part says, I can imagine it must feel really bad when you have those deep feelings of being forgotten, being abandoned. And
Right.
so that set the stage for the request. What do you think about that?
I mean, that is wonderful when somebody gets this gift of validation and empathy. It's like this gift that just washes over you. And that is so healing, because our partner can has the power to be really healing for us. And then it gives us the ability to think and take responsibility for ourselves and say, what do I really need? How can I, be okay be, feel okay in these situations, and, be okay for my husband too. Let him do what he needs to and not take it personally. So it starts to get people to take responsibility for themselves from that place that we're together in this, we have safety. And she could say something like, you know what, I understand that you have to do this. It's a business thing, but if you would just check in with me every 20 or 30 minutes, just glance at me, make sure I'm okay, then, we'll be fine and we'll feel connected. So that gives her the power to take responsibility and ask for something that's really reasonable, and to really stay out of the reactivity and more into the connection and support of each other.
And you just nailed it. The last part was
Mhm.
that turning that frustration into that kind of request that you mentioned, and that's exactly what happened. As Ben empathized with Laurel, she then said, I asked her to say one thing that would help me going forward. She said one thing that would help me would at the next time word is this. Not it's important when you make a request, recognize that what you're asking for is your partner needs to take a step of growth into that behavior, because we've learned this beautiful thing about the marriage relationship is that my partner's need for healing is my blueprint for growth and vice versa.
It's
And so
really cool. Yeah,
yeah, isn't that's really cool.
it really is.
So Laurel said one thing to help me next time, not for the rest of our life, but next time, if you'll take a step and do this, when we're at a party, if you'll just look for me every 30 minutes, touch my hand, look me in the eye, and ask how I'm doing. And Ben, like with tears in his eyes, says, "I'd be more than happy to do that for you." And
Mhm.
so that's the way you can do it, folks.
Yeah, really simple, right?
Yeah, yeah, simple but not easy, right? Because we have all these forces working against us, but we have to start with what you began with,
Mhm.
making it safe,
Exactly.
making
Safety,
it safe.
safety, safety.
Yeah,
Yeah.
safety and then connection can occur. Well, we want to invite you to our next workshop. We have one scheduled for March the 7th, and it's going to be at 1 p.m. That's a Sunday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m., 4 p.m.,
4 p.m. Eastern time.
4 p.m. Eastern time. And
And in between, wherever you are. Yeah. All right.
we'd love to have you.
Definitely.
Meanwhile, comment in the comment section and we'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you next week.
Yes. Thank you. Have a good week.